Okay, let's do question 73, and it looks like question 74, and we can work from there. Now, question 73, to be honest, is a bit of a maze. I'll say it's a bit of a maze, and I'll work through it. And I think the experience of this is good for you because it'll hold you in good stead for some of the other interesting ones. So now, what do you have? Because you maybe tried this and you were looking for something, and you're thinking, where is it? How do I find this? So they first give you some information here and give you what the cost, some general information. They tell you, oh, listen, this is great information, by the way. This is the budget or the standard costs. These are the standard costs here. Although this is the budget, we know what the standard cost is per unit of materials. We know what the standard costs are per unit of labor. So we know, right? We know 2 and 4. We know that. Now, then we move on and they give us some more information here. So the first thing I want to highlight here, because I just read the question and I've worked through the question, is this, that the standard cost of the standard cost, if you like, of making these 6,000 units, the standard cost, right? Because the standard cost is £2 a unit. And so therefore for 6,000 units, the standard cost is therefore £12,000. That's what I'm expecting to spend. Now the question says here that the overall material cost was 890 variable, which means that you spent 890 less on actually making, on what it is you bought and what it is you paid for, which we'll find out. Um, we spent 12,000 minus that, and that comes to £11,110. So we had a favorable cost scenario overall, 11,110, right? So this is what actually happened um, in the end. So when I look at the inputs of what actually happened, I have a figure to refer to. In fact, when I'm because I still want to use the graphs to really explain what's going on here. That's the first thing I wanted to pick up on. Now, the other thing I think that's important to pick up on here is that it says here that you spend £2 on every unit. And if you see here, it says here that during the period, the actual cost of material was £10.10. I'll come back to that. But the standard quantity per unit was 0.2 liters. So you need 0.2 liters to make a unit. And if you need 0.2 liters to make a unit and you're spending £2 per unit, it means that the cost of a liter, the standard cost of a liter is £10. The standard cost of my liter is £10, right? That's the first thing. It must be, because if you're spending £2 and you need 0.2 liters to make a unit, it must be £10. The question does go ahead to say that, listen, what actually happened was that you spent £10 and £10 on a liter. But hey, here's the thing: £10 and 10 on a liter, but you know what the total spending was. The total spending was 11,110. So if the total spending was 11,110, I can actually find out the actual number of liters that I actually bought, and that must be the 11,110 divided by the £10 and 10, right? I believe that's the cost. That was £10 and 10, which is equal to 1,100 liters. So I actually bought 1,100 liters. Now, so I'm almost there now because I have my information is getting better. Now the question here is, well, if you're supposed to use 0.2 liters um, per unit and you're making 6,000 units, so 0.2 times 6,000 units. That means you're supposed to use 1,200 liters, right? Because 0.2 liters per unit for 6,000 units, you're supposed to use 1,200 liters. So I'll just clean this place up a little and just tidy this up so that my graphs are now very clear. So, I mean, these are my numbers. These are the key numbers that I need and I could do what I like now. I'm supposed to use £10 and 1200 liters, but what ended up happening was I used £10.20 and 1100. So first question, if I'm asked, I could do it both ways. The first question says here for material variance that find the material price variance and the usage variance. Let's discuss the usage variance first. So the usage variance here is that you ended up using 1100 liters instead of 1200. So that's a 100 liter favorability, right? That's the favorable point here. And of course, the standard cost is £10. So this is your usage variance. It's favorable. So it's 10 times 100 liters, which is £1,000. So here you have for usage £1,000. Now, what happened here was that you spent 10p more on these 1,100 liters. So 10p times 1,100 is 110 pounds. And of course, this is adverse. Of course, this is favorable. This is adverse, and that is favorable. So of course, if you add the two together, if you add these two together, of course, what you see is you get 890 favorable. So a bit of a maze, but the point here is step by step. I needed to find this 11,100. I just needed to. But by knowing the total here, I knew that if I could find the standard cost of making all the units and compare that, well, I know what the variances is given to me. And we've seen questions like this, right? We've seen questions like this where you have, they're asking you to compare the standard cost of making something, which is your flexed budget, versus what actually you've spent on it. And that's what this total variance is. I then break this up, don't I, into the price and the usage, to the price and the usage. And that's how you deal with this. And that is my usage variance. You're supposed to use 1,200 because it says 0.2 liters is the standard. To make 6,000 units, it must be therefore 1,200 versus what you actually used of 1,100. And how did I find that? Because I could actually find out how much I spent on the actual products that we bought and how much each liter is, because it's given to you. That's that over there. And we literally apply the same principle to labor, right? We apply the same principle to labor. And let's just tidy up things a little so we have some space to just make sure this is clean so we can actually have some space to do some work. But we apply literally the same principle to labor. Same principle to labor. Let's just do this 1 second. Just give this place a clean up. Okay. And so I'm applying the same principle to labor up here. I have a scenario where I know that I'm spending £4 per unit, and therefore I should be spending on 6,000 units. 4 times 6,000 should be spending £24,000. That should be the cost of labor on making these units. Now, what did we actually spend? Well, it tells me that you have labor of £1,000 adverse. So what actually happened was you actually spent 25,000 on getting all the labor needed to work on those 6,000 units. So this is what actually happened. This is what actually happened, this 25,000, because that's the 1,000 variance. It tells us it's adverse. You spent more than you should have. So that's the starting point. So now that you know that you spent 25,000 pounds on, I'll just draw my chart again. So again here, if you're spending, let's just look at what the question says. It says the standard time per unit is 0.8 hours per unit. So I should have spent, so let's just do that, 0.8. Well, I mean, really, not not sure where to start on this, but let's just start with, it says here that 4,500 hours were actually worked. So if you worked 4,500 hours actually worked, again, like I say, I mean, I can find how much each of those hours actually cost, right? 4,500, how much of those hours actually cost. So, um, I think that's the first thing. Well, there's a number of things. Let's do that. We can do all of them. 4,500, well, I'm sorry, 25,000 divided by 4,500 is equal to, well, I don't even need this figure, but I'm just going to put it in. That's the actual cost of an hour. And you did 4,500. That's what you actually worked. Let me just quickly find what hours you should have worked. So you're supposed to do 0.8 hours per unit. It tells you there, 0.8 hours per unit, and you do 6,000 units. So you're supposed to therefore spend 0.8 times 6,000 is 4,800. So you're supposed to do 4,800, but you've done 4,500. Now, what I just quickly need to find is the standard cost um, of in terms of time. So um, it says here that um, in terms of per hour, um, in terms of the pricing here. So that's it. So you spend £4 per unit, £4 per unit, right? And you need 0.8 hours per unit. So if you're spending £4 in terms of labor per unit, and you are spending 0.8 hours um, per unit, so that means that £4 is, if you like, the equivalent of 0.8 hours, and therefore the cost of an hour, if you like, is 4 divided by 0.8. Yes, 4 divided by 0.8, 4 divided by 0.8, which is 5. So really what you're charging is £5 an hour, right? Because you're spending £4 in a unit and you're using 0.8 hours. So you're basically paying £4 for 0.8 hours. But I really want to know what the cost is per hour so I can sort of, play around with what I'm doing. And then you're done because this is your standard cost per hour because I need it per hour. And so my efficiency variance, of course, is the difference between these two, which of course you did 4,500 instead of 4,800. So that's efficient. That's efficient by 300 hours. So 300 hours times 5, 300 hours times 5, 300 hours times 5 is equal to 1,500. Favorable, favorable. And but but unfortunately, you have now spent more, which is I mean, you can look at it as you spent 25,000, and that's fine. Better to do it that way so you don't miss any decimals. You spent 25,000 when you should be spending 5 times 4,400, right? Because that's the standard. You should be spending £5 on whatever hours you're doing, and you've done 4,500. So I need to be comparing 25,000, which you actually spent, with 5 times 4,500. 5 times 4,500 is 22,500. This is 22,500, and therefore you have an adverse variance of 2,500. You have an adverse variance of 2,500. Add these two together and you see you have this 1,000 adverse. That's how you get the 1,000 adverse. So you can see here they've actually done some good work here. The actual cost. Oh, I think I did all of that earlier on in terms of getting the actual cost of material. So my standard cost of labor, of course, here was 4 times. I did that here. That was 24. So this was 24. Oh, sorry. This was 24. This was 25. I calculated that earlier on, right? That was 25, and this was 24 because I know the difference is 1,000. And I think if I remember here from the labor question, um, I can just quickly look at that very quickly. That was 2. So the standard was 12 for labor. And of course, this would have been 11100. Yeah. And that's how we deal with that. Slightly long, a long question, but please follow it carefully. Follow it carefully in trying to remember that we're dealing with inputs. So these figures here only help me to work out the actual um, input amounts. But this is something you will see again and again, and you need to be happy with that. That the difference between the actual cost of material and the standard cost of production, so that's taking the standard cost of a unit and multiplying it by actual output, is what this is. But this is the actual cost times the actual output, and that's why you have that difference. Great. Okay, and that's the overall, yeah, and that's like a flex budget. This is the actual flex budget times that, but we break it up into the two parts, and we do the same over there. Okay, great stuff.